I was sexually abused, but I liked it. I, 16F, grew up in a messed up household. I am half Filipino-Australian, and I grew up with divorced parents since I was 3. My parents were emotionally abusive, and I was constantly neglected. Because of that, I never understood what it was like to fully be happy, or even seen. And to be honest, I never actually wanted to live. Yeah, it was rough for my teacher having to hear that from an 8-year-old. During school projects, I would always hear my classmates tell each other, when they grow up, they're going to be a rock star or police officer. All I wanted was a mum who loved me and a dad who stopped drinking, but I figured it's maybe wrong to say that out loud. Now to clarify, my life looked normal because that was the facade my family tried perceiving. I was always top of my class in every subject. I could write essays when I was 9. I knew all Shakespeare content by the time I was 10, and I was in all advanced classes in high school. My mind was beyond my age. I began studying subjects university students could because that was all I knew. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be older. I blame this on my rough childhood. My trauma manifested into mental illnesses that impacted me harder than I ever could have estimated. Growing up, every time I ate, my mom and siblings always called me fat, purposefully starving me or putting my food on the floor so I won't eat it. They'd break my toys, lock me in rooms, tell me I'm nothing, then pretend they never said anything. They'd always get angry at me, and I never knew why. Because of this, I gained an eating disorder when I was 10. I wasn't anorexic, but I knew what restricting was and calorie tracking, and that's what I did. But it was never enough for my family, so I gave up. I hated myself. I knew they'd never accepted me, so I started finding someone who would. I was smart enough to know being loved can be found. I just needed to know where. My loneliness grew so much that I gave up and turned to the internet. I found comfort in strangers. I found comfort in the one thing I never had: validation. Worst of it, male validation. I spent most nights on Omegle or random chat servers with people of all kinds. At first, they taught me how to talk to people and how to open up. They told me the feelings I felt weren't wrong, and I am worthy of anything. The conversations with strangers varied to all subjects, most of all, what I loved. I always found myself talking to older men. Divorced, older me. Men in their 30s to 40s. I knew I was being groomed, but the attention they gave me made me want more. I loved it. For once, I felt loved. They knew my age too, but I guess that doesn't matter when you don't care. Now there was this one man in his early 40s. For privacy's sake, let's call him Chris. He adored me, the validation he gave me in my work and my art pieces, and telling me how well I've done. Made me feel things I never had before. So I gave Chris anything he wanted, and he wanted me. After the talks about my work, I'd let him talk to me like I was his age, what sex was, and how it worked. He'd show me positions, and if I can do them, he'd tell me all the things they wanted to do to me, and in a way, I loved it. I was being seen for once. Someone loved my body. Being neglected and constantly being told everything that's wrong with you drains every source in you, and being told for once that someone loves it. It was new and different, and it was music to my ears. Now Chris called me every night. We'd catch up, laugh, debate on literature, and genuinely have a good time together. And then I'd do things to myself you'd only see in Cornhub. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing to myself, but he loved it, so I did too. Now if you're wondering, yes, he had a wife. He used to tell me all about her. She's a smart woman who is a heavy feminist and loves control in what she does. She's free-spirited, kind-hearted, and beyond smart. She's beautiful too. And yes, he has kids, my age and younger. 2 boys, 1 girl, and yes, she's the youngest. I know it's messed up. I remember thinking if he saw me like this and I was 13, what about his daughter? But I was alone and abused. I wanted anything to feel happiness. So, I let it slip out of my mind. Now it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows with Chris. Some nights he would just be demanding for me naked with a list of things he wanted to see. He'd use me and cut the connection once he finished. It was toxic. He'd scream at me, threatening to block me if I didn't give him what he wanted. He'd tell me things like him finding another woman, showing me videos of them having intercourse. I was traumatized and scared of losing him because then I'd have no one. So I always gave him what he wanted. And from there, he'd give me what I wanted if I obeyed. It somehow made me happy. He'd send me money otherwise, listen about my family problems, and be there for me. I fell in love with the feeling of being loved. And from there on, I began headhunting for other men, doing the same things I'd do with Chris, minus the talking. In some messed up way, I thought the talking should only be saved for Chris, while I feed into other men's fantasies. I was like this for 3 years. I never gave my body away physically. I was clean. I know that doesn't make a difference, but I never met up with anyone. Mostly because all of them are in America and I'm in Australia. And honestly, I was too scared of the thought of being physical. Chris made the biggest impact in my life. Although I was being groomed by a now 45-year-old man, he was good to me. But fantasies don't last when you're in reality. A long while ago, he got caught. His wife found out, and we stopped talking. Now I don't know what's happened to him. He could be in jail if anything. But we haven't for 2 years, and as bad as it sounds, I hope he's doing okay. What he has done is wrong. To his wife, kids, family, and me. But to be honest, I loved him. He was a good guy, just had a lot of concerning issues. And for me, well, I'm not like that anymore. I started working on myself and began to talk to people face to face. People my age, of course, and I met someone, we'll call him Connor. Without knowing this experience I've been through, he's helped me in ways I never thought. He's taught me how to love properly. He introduced me to his family and made me feel a part of it. He loves me more than my body, doesn't demand for anything, and is gentle. Now, I'm not glorifying sexual abuse or grooming. I have never told a soul this experience, and I simply just finally want to get this off my chest. But I don't regret what Chris and I did. For me, it's an amazing story of how I began to have control, lost it all, and began to tell my story the way I want to. Although that's a different story. Without Chris, I never would have gained my own voice within my family's abuse. I never would have gained consciousness in my own life. I wouldn't be here today without the lesson of Chris. And if you're somehow reading this, Chris, and you know it's you, thank you. What you did traumatized me, hurt me, and almost ended me. But you made me gain control of my life and created a path that I journeyed to know what I do today. If you're reading this thinking it's messed up, I don't blame you. It is. But if there's anyone out there with the same experience, or simply just wants their story told like I do, I'm all ears. And if you've faced abuse like I have, loneliness, depression, suicidal thoughts, you're not alone. Your path is being made. Hopefully not as bad as mine was, but either way, you'll be grateful it happened. Don't give up. Whenever you are stuck in darkness, look for their light.